Awesome. So, before we start, I've already given this message once. Some other people have come in. I want to give this message again. This is an interactive talk. We gave it last year. It was pretty popular. We're giving it again. We only have about 4 or 5 actual slides in here. This obviously does not count as one. We'll probably talk for maybe 10 minutes, and then it's open up for you guys to talk to us about what you would like us to be looking into for the future with our APIs. We'll take some notes. I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. If you were hoping for a deep technical talk on how our APIs work, there were other ones, and you can go watch them, and they're recorded, but this isn't that. So, welcome to Between Two T-Rexes. I'm Lee Graber. I am the Senior Engineering Manager for the developer platform. So many of the APIs we will talk about are worked on by people who work for me. Not everything. Our team does not own all of the APIs. And with me, you can say your name. I'm not going to introduce you. You're going to have to talk this time.
I'm Ankit Patel. I'm a SaaS software engineer on the developer platform team. And I'm working on the REST APIs, and I worked on extensions APIs. So you can ask me questions about those things.
Cool. So today's talk, we're going to go through where we are, what we think we're going to do, and then you're going to talk to us about where you want to see us go. Again, I mentioned earlier, I'm mentioning again, sorry, at about 3 o'clock, I am going to disappear and Ankit will continue because I am a replacement for this talk. I think I am an able-bodied replacement, but my flight was already booked and I have to make my flight. So, this is the traditional slide we've been showing in all of our talks. If you haven't been to a single session on the APIs and automation, well, I'm sad, but this is the slide that they all started with. The focus in this discussion is on that upper left-hand box. If you really have something that you want to talk about somewhere else, you can try and plug that in and we'll see. So we're talking about automation integration stuff. This is an overview of what we have. I think someone mentioned the metadata API. It's not listed in this. We're happy to talk about that some. But with regards to our server REST APIs, we currently have a bunch of content management APIs, publishing workbooks, managing data sources, users, groups, sites. We have a Python library. If any of you took the Automate Your Life with Python, I know the woman right in the middle over there. She did because I was helping her. That walked you through how to use our server client library. It's a heck of a lot easier than trying to write your own code and read through all of our documentation on how the REST API request response looks like. We recently released webhooks. Webhooks is a common standard. If you're not sure what webhooks are, you don't have to go to Tableau, search for Tableau webhooks. If you just look up webhooks, you'll find tons of documentation on what they are. We have finally implemented them. We've implemented, I want to say 9 events, and I should know the exact number, but it was changing a little bit right at the end. These are callback events so that we will let you know when a workbook was published or created, or when a data source extract was refreshed successfully, or more importantly for 90% of your scenarios, when an extract refresh failed. I think that's 90% of what everybody wanted. Tab CMD. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in our future plans, but Tab CMD is currently a command line tool for managing Tableau server. You see that much of what it can do, the REST API can do, and you should hopefully be able to do from TSC. We have tried to make it parity, and I'm going to mention what my hopes and dreams are for Tab CMD in the not too distant future. And another really big one that we just released in 19.4 is personal access tokens. So a number of people who went to sessions about automating your life with Python said, my Tableau server is set up to use single sign-on with blah, blah, blah. How can I use the REST APIs? And while there are some options right now, like create a user that doesn't use your single sign-on, or there's a really creative hack that if you went to Tamash's session earlier, he would probably know, that you can do to do your own handshake and then actually get us to talk. But the general thing was, it's not so great. Personal access tokens are our answer. You go to Tableau server, you sign in to Tableau server with whatever your auth mechanism is, and then you can generate in Tableau server these auth tokens, which then you can use instead of a username and password. We have full support for it in Tableau server client. And then you can connect, you can audit that, you can revoke them, and it should be significantly more manageable and make your IT department happy. Oh wow, I hadn't actually clicked through like this. Oh, he's got lots of, I'm not big on the clicking, so hold on a second. All right, future of the REST API. So the majority of what I hear people asking from the REST API is around gaps. Like somebody actually put a slide up in a different session that said our REST API is pretty complete. And if you use it for a while, you start getting annoyed because there are little gaps. So one of the things we are working on for our REST API in our future and our vision is VizPortal client and our other clients built on top of the API we tell you to use. So then, when you see something in VizPortal client, and you want to put that in your own portal, well, it's in the documentation. If you can't find it in the documentation, you run Fiddler, and you hit run, and you say, oh, that's what you're doing, and then you search for that method. And so our goal with the future of the REST API, and there'll be some evolution in how it looks as we move this along. There's some things about the URL scheme that we're going to be slowly moving, but that is one of our long-term goals, and we are actually starting on that path. In the shorter term, we are continuing to address gaps, and client libraries is one where, while we want to keep moving forward with TSC because it is significantly easier, we're also looking at things like OpenAPI spec, where if we can provide a specification, while it might not be wonderful for you, the generated code, you can actually generate a client library in whatever language. Maybe you love Rust. I have people on my team who like to program in Rust. Generate a client library. Authentication improvements. That's one where we constantly get feedback on how we can better integrate with your infrastructure. Maybe you're using an auth proxy in Google Cloud Platform, and you want to be able to manage your user permissions there. So this is something that we're continuing to look at, how we integrate with more authentication systems, how we provide more flexible authorization schemes with things like policies. It's on our roadmap amongst a large number of teams. This is not one team that would work on any of that. We only recently provided a GraphQL endpoint, the metadata API. That's something we're going to continue to expand upon. One of the interesting things we're trying to sort out is currently our REST APIs provide some limited search capabilities in the URL scheme. If you've played around with at the end, you can put a query string parameter filter, and there's a URL query string syntax for filtering. The metadata API with GraphQL syntax is a bit richer. Simple things there you can do and in our current REST APIs. But looking at how we think about that and give you sort of one message around what's the best way to do this, and also give a clear message. Our GraphQL endpoints have a slight delay. They're an index, so after we insert, something gets indexed and moved over to what the GraphQL endpoint is hitting. And so being very clear about whether or not whatever query you're running is hitting the truth, like this, if you did an insert and then you did a select, or if you did a create and then you did a get, the get will return. We need to be very clear about that versus if you did a create and then you do a search, it could take 1 second before it shows up in the search. So we want to make sure we give you very clear, understandable sort of principles around the API. Tab CMD, I mentioned that before. My goal, as soon as I have some free time, is this will become an open source project that is built on TSC. Currently, it is not, and there's no good reason for that. I can't make one up, except it's historical. It was written a long time ago. And so we did all the work to go through everything that was in Tab's command and make sure we could do it in our REST APIs, and now we just want to provide it for you. It would become something we would support, but it would also become a great example for you. You could fork it, add your own commands, maybe push them, create a merge request, and we might think they were useful enough that we would pull them in. But that is the goal for Tab command. Webhooks, it's all about adding more events and merging with other notification parts of our system. So someone was asking me earlier about why are data-driven alerts only sending emails? Can I do data-driven alerts to trigger a webhook? These are all interesting ideas. We're trying to merge together all of the various ways we have to notify you, be them subscriptions, be them data-driven alerts, be them webhooks, and create something that's, you'll still have all that flexibility. You still get subscriptions the way they are, but somehow a lot of these, you might want to do that as a webhook, or you might want to do that as an email, and trying to figure out what the best way to do that and give you the flexibility. And the last one, document API. I was shocked the other day. We did I don't remember how we did analysis, and apparently the document API is the most popular API we have according to some metric. How many people have ever used the document API? See, it's not that many. How many people have used the REST API? All right, see, that's what I expect. But the document API does one thing, and everybody needed that one thing, I guess, which is you had something in like a test environment, and you needed to change the connection string parameters before you moved it to production, because your database was somewhere else. It's the same schema, but it's just over here. You're working against test data, and now you're going to move to the live data. And this was, at the time, our method of doing it, and it's actually still our method. We're trying to understand the best way to continue to add stuff. You're never going to be able to create a TWIB from scratch programmatically. That is not something on our roadmap. Templated TWIBs is interesting. If you've played around with starters, that's essentially sort of what they are. Data source APIs is actually much more interesting. Being able to create a TDS. A lot of people have talked to me this week about they use the Hyper API, they generate a Hyper file, and then they want to publish it to server, and they're missing the TDS. They need a TDS, and they need to wrap it up into a TDSX. For those of you who are nodding, like the man in the front, I have just told them to look at it and just generate it. And it's not great. It's not a great answer because I'm not telling you to use some API that we support, but the TDS is relatively straightforward, and a lot of people have already been doing this. And in case you didn't know, a TDSX, the X just means it's a zip file. If you change the extension to .zip, you get to look at what it looks like, and you can just create that. And while I'm not saying it's wonderful that I have to tell you that this is how it works, you can get that to work. But creating TDS files and being able to package a Hyper file together, that is something we are looking at. Programmatically creating TDS files is definitely something that customers have needs for, especially customers who use the Hyper API. This is because this was supposed to be a chalk talk, and then we got moved in here, which I found very funny given how big this room was, and we went from a chalk talk to this. So to the board is not happening, so we put this slide back in. And I think, yeah, this is the end of my portion of the talking. And now what I would like to do is open up the floor and hear from you guys. What are the issues you're seeing? What are the things you need? If you have specific questions about whether we're looking at this or that, nothing I say is, I will give no timelines. I will give no promises. But I can say things that we find interesting or things that aren't even on a roadmap. Like someone asked me whether or not we were going to have integration with GitHub for allowing multiple people to manage, like work on a workbook at the same time and then merge it together. That's not even on our roadmap. I can tell you that. What? Someone else did? Okay. Well, were you the one who brought it up to me? Okay, so my friend here in the front here, he brought that up to me and I was honest and I said, I've never even heard anybody talk about that. But now we've got feedback. Someone blog posted?
It's from years ago, like 3 or 4 years. You can do it.
I mean, you can put it. I don't know how they're going to make sense of the changes in a reasonable merge. Like, they're going to merge the TWIB like it's a static file. And
A lot of what's in the TWIB, you know, that gets generated it's not really relevant to and so you can do that, write a script as part of the merge TWIB. They did that. Say, hey, remove all this stuff.
I'll repeat, don't worry. So the claim is that there is a way they are writing a script to remove some of the not as relevant content in the TWIB and make it easier to do the merge. I don't know. I have not tried it. There may or may not. Support. Now I have another person giving us feedback that support for the thing that I just mentioned was not on any roadmap I am aware of. So please, all right, we'll go with hands. We'll start all the way over here.
You've been recently acquired by Tableau, right? I mean, Salesforce, right? So what are the integration plans of Tableau on Salesforce? There are cool features in the Salesforce, right?
Yep.
Like portals, something that we use, and integrating Tableau with portals.
So I will say that my friend in the back there was correct. It is very hard to hear you because it echoes. It's not that I can't hear the words, it's the echo that comes. So you might see me leaning forward to try and get past the echo. So the question was about Salesforce. So currently we have released something from like 6 years ago called Sparkler, which is our Salesforce Canvas-based integration. There is a Tableau employee in the sales division who has written a new integration with their Lightning framework and a visual force page. I have been investigating that some. I think it is safe to say that we will be looking at the best ways to integrate. I don't have a definitive answer. I would be ashamed if we didn't update from the old Sparkler to a Lightning framework-based integration, which might still be as simple as it's an embedded viz, but you'll be able to do some interaction with the rest of the Salesforce, report dashboard. We are investing in our connectivity to Salesforce. I know we've been updating the wire protocol we've been using to send the, what is it? It's not SOCL, but the queries that we send. I forget their two syntaxes. So it is certainly, they're a parent company now. People are going to ask that. We should have better integration. So I would expect sometime in the not distant future that we will have something better than what we have today. And then it'll be a while as we try and figure out the best thing we can do. But Michigan, yes? Is that Michigan? Michigan.
I was part of a hackathon event on.
Yeah. All right, say it again.
I'll just repeat for the crowd
Okay.
here. So webhooks API, in your documentation, you have the entire Postman collection in the GitHub, but I don't see that for the REST API or any other like document APIs or something. So if Tableau can provide that entire Postman collections for the REST API, that would be really helpful for the consumers. Because webhooks, it was very easy. I downloaded the Postman collection and I was able to kind of test them. But for REST API, I had to, documentation is good, but I have to copy paste it. So if Tableau can put the Postman collection for the entire REST APIs and any other APIs, any REST, any other like document API or GraphQL, I don't know.
Well, Document API would not have a Postman collection because it is just a local, like you work against a local file. So the question was about our Postman collections. First off, I'm glad that you were able to maneuver through our Postman, that you were comfortable with it. I would say that in the hands-on training that I was at, and I was at 3 of them, probably greater than 70% of people are not so comfortable with Postman. I can tell you that it is already in our development branch to have webhooks in TSC, because we want to keep making it easier. So that should come into master and be published sometime in the next couple of weeks is my guess. Do you want to speak?
I would like to add that the open API spec that we are working on for the new APIs, that can be also imported into Postman.
Yeah, so Open API spec can be imported into Postman. We are also working on more Postman collections. We even have some prototypes of including that in our documentation. So when you go to our docs, you'll be able to do some interactive.
In some of the other vendor, you can go and try it there itself.
Yep.
But I don't see that option in Tableau at this point.
Not yet.
That's what I was just thinking.
We experimented with that some. I don't know if or when that timeline would be for it to show up in our docs, but that was one of the experiments. We have Open API spec work that's going on, which can be imported into Postman, and for all of those, for the majority of you who are probably not as comfortable with Postman, maybe in this room you all are, we are working on, again, making webhooks, like you have access to it in TSC, and at some point in the future we'll put a UI on it also. UI is obviously gated on releases of Tableau, where updates to TSC we can do whenever we want. Yes?
About your future data source API, it will be possible to create some folder like into Tableau desktop, you know, you can regroup your dimension and your user to make that something nice, because when I use Hyper API and I publish on the Tableau server, like if I have 100 dimensions, it's just a list and it's not very user-friendly.
Okay. The comment was that if and when we have our data source API, the ability to group related, dimensions and measures in a way that will make it significantly easier when you connect to the data source. That should, if we do this, when we do this, I would imagine that would be there since that's part of the definition. So yes, I'm not aware of any reason that wouldn't be there. But again, I give no timeline, but that is definitely something we want to do because we know it is a blocking issue for people.
What's about the connector SDK? I read something, you work on it.
I know plenty about it. Briefly, the connector SDK. The connector SDK is really meant for if you have a ODBC or JDBC connector and you don't like the experience of other ODBC, because it's kind of ugly. You just have to know, you go there, and then you better know the DSN. And then the experience Tableau is able to give you is not customized for that data source. We know it's ODBC, so we just do what we do for generic ODBC. We can discover a couple things. The connector SDK is usually meant for database vendors or for intermediate companies like CData, who is downstairs. They like to build like connectors to data sources that we don't connect to. They were previously just building JDBC or ODBC drivers. Now they can build a taco file, and it shows up as, connect to BagelDB instead of other ODBC, and I put in a DSN to BagelDB. So can I come back to you, or do you? All right, let's go around some more. Sure.
Yes, we have some rogue workbook developers that have like greater than 2 gig Twibix files. And so when we try to do a REST API call to download those, in TSC, Python, we get memory errors. And it seems you build the Twibix in memory in Python, and then when it's all done, you write it out, and that's why we're running out of memory. So are you going to stream that or change the way that you build the Twibix files at some point?
So are you getting the memory error on the on your Python side or on
Yeah,
the
on the
Tableau
Python
server?
side.
It's on the Python side. Because I know we just made a couple fixes on the server side to fix some places where we're accidentally like pulling the whole stream into memory. And we fixed it so it would be much more of a streaming. I'm not aware of this issue. So
And I know that we got some help because we have like an 8 gig Linux machine, and in going up to 16 gig, it worked fine. It didn't give me a memory error. So I believe you're probably building the Twibix file in memory, and then when it's all done, then you try to write it out, and we never get that far.
So I don't know. I didn't think we actually did that, but it's been a while since I stared at that level of the code. While I can't answer that question for you right now, the server client library is open source. You are welcome, or your developer, if you have somebody who's comfortable in Python. I mean, it's kind of a, well, you know, it lets me off the hook, I guess, for now. But so I don't know the answer. I have not tried a workbook that big. I thought we stream it to a file, but the code is, you know, if you go to GitHub for that server client Python, and you go into the Tableau server client folder, you're in there. There'll be 2 folders. One says models. Don't worry about those. Those just describe the objects. If you go into the server, there you are. The stuff in there should have the actual right to file. Or if you go into the endpoint folder, you'll actually see the endpoint for workbooks. And you can kind of step through, and you'll see what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
That could be it. It's an HTTP call, not a
I mean,
streaming.
it is an HTTP call, but I thought as we're pulling it off the wire, we're dumping chunks down in. Like, I don't think we do big copies around. We don't chunk it down.
We receive the whole response as a whole, and then we write to a file. So it would be in memory for a little bit.
I mean, we get the whole file, but I thought we did something a little smart, but I don't remember. I'd have to look. 2 gig twib is big. What are you downloading it for? Whether you just wanted to download it? Okay. There is an option. It's probably not meaningful to you. When you download, you can say don't download the extract. If you just want the twib for some reason, usually it was used by people doing like document API, or just before we had the metadata API, they were just trying to parse things. But I don't know if that's useful for you. I think the man in the middle had his hand.
Hey guys, so I represent Red Hat, and we actually leverage Tableau Online, and I know for our admins they have one very specific roadmap request, and it relates to API connectivity to the bridge, so specifically assigning bridges to data sources. Right now they have to do that completely manually, and so they were wondering if there's any roadmap for that functionality or integration to be done at any point, and if not,
Write this one down. I haven't heard this one before. So the bridge is owned by a sister team of mine.
okay.
So I'd have to ping Stefan and see if they're planning on it. But so you want to be able to programmatically assign data sources to specific
To bridges.
bridges.
Correct.
Okay. We'll write that down. I
Awesome.
have no answer.
No, that's great. Thank you.
This on? Yeah.
There you go.
I work for a bank, and we're beginning to really drive the adoption of Tableau and use it for more and more critical information, as things that come under SOX compliance and more, restricted data. Our audit team would really like more audit data about what's happening on the Tableau server when users are deleting workbooks or changing permissions or doing anything. So the ability to programmatically query an object and see a stream of, kind of what's happened to it over a period of time, or query a user and see what they did, not necessarily logging on and looking at dashboards or anything, but, changes they've made in the server UI as a server admin or a project manager or something like that.
So I think they did announce in the keynote or devs stage about more admin level reporting and auditing feature. Yeah. I think it's very similar features to what you're requesting. They did announce that. That I'm not sure. Yeah, but it's going to be, when you log in as a server admin to TSM, it's going to have more views on what objects are getting touched and what calls are getting performed by you, what user activity and the load on the server and everything. Yeah, yeah, it probably will, yeah.
All right, you can go.
Which utility would be the most performant for exporting PDFs and images, just exporting in general, currently, or?
You mean between like using
Tab
the REST
command or
API
the REST
versus
API?
tab command?
Yep.
So it is an unfortunate statement that you have to ask that,
Yes.
because the meaning of that is that tab command technically doesn't use the exact same API as the REST API. Underneath the covers, they use the exact same thing. So the tab command for export PDF hits an endpoint directly on VisCool server, whereas the REST API will go briefly through a little bit of a layer that we have for like our controllers for REST, but then underneath the covers it does the exact same thing. So you should have the same performance. Have you seen differences?
No, right now I'm just using tab command and it's slow, so I was curious if it would be more performant with something else.
I don't think your performance issues have anything to do with tab command versus REST. My guess is it's just
Workbook
the
complexity.
workbook. I mean, you could try in desktop, seeing how long it takes to actually export to PDF also, to see if it's just, what does slow mean to you? Like,
Well, unfortunately we have to generate a mass amount of PDFs, and we can't leverage subscriptions just for multiple reasons. So
we do have people who do like report factory type
Yeah.
stuff. So they should all be similar in time. Like, I think it's just if you're using us to generate massive number of PDFs, it might take a little while.
okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
and then we'll come back to you. I think the gentleman here.
Okay, so I'm kind of new to Tableau. I've only been with the company I'm with for about 8 months or so, and they gave me a specific task fairly early on. So what I was tasked with was generating roughly 1,013-page PDFs from a given workbook, and I ended up using tab command and essentially just writing a C# app that would cycle through because I needed to pass parameters to it.
Filter parameters.
Yes.
Yep.
And so I ran into a couple of really big problems. First of all, I was only able to print out one page at a time because if I saved more than one page, it would put all of the pages squished together on a single page of the PDF. So what I ended up doing was actually doing roughly 14,000 separate PDFs and then merging them using another C# app. And one of the other problems I ran across is that as it was going through and making the individual calls, I would get regular 404 errors and regular, I'm trying to remember what the other error is now, but it was, there was a not found and another one that I can't remember at the moment. But what I found is that if I slowed down the calls, I didn't run into those errors. So what I ended up having to do was just put a pause in the process in order to make it work. So I was wondering, A, is there anything on the roadmap for being able to generate multiple page PDFs? And 2, are you going to make it, or
Fix our bug.
Yeah, fix the bug where it stops working.
You can be gentle, or you can just be like, I'm not going to be offended here. It's okay. Like, don't yell at me, don't throw things at me, but you don't have to like. If you found that if you tried to. You writing this one down? All right, so we're writing down the bug. With regards to the export to PDF on multiple pages, I thought that works. I know we added export the entire workbook to a PDF in the, like 2 or 3 releases ago. So does it work with the REST API? You should try the REST API and see if that works for you for all of them.
Right.
And then we can take a look at why tab command doesn't behave exactly right, but I know we added that for REST API.
Yeah, well, and I can tell you that when I initially set it up, it was running 13 threads because there were 13 different pages, and I was just pulling the different pages for different athletes because that's what I'm working with. And what happened is I had about a 65% failure rate in the calls to retrieve those PDFs because it was trying to do multiple pages all at the same time. And the minute that I set it down to 1 and put in the pause, I went from a 65% failure rate to about a 1%.
Okay. And did you have an answer for what I missed there? Full PDF option, which I -- full PDF. I don't remember all the options for every command, I'll admit that. So check it out. But the other one, we'll have to do some stress testing on our download to various formats. Well, all right, we'll go here, and then we'll go back to you, because I know you've been waiting patiently, and then we'll go here. We'll go with this gentleman first.
Okay. Hi. So I wanted to know that can we use Python with Tableau Online? We use Tableau Online extensively, and I think we can't leverage Python for it.
So the Tableau server client, you should be able to use the Python library to log in. If, however, you're using non-Tableau identifier, like Tableau IDs, and you're getting like redirected because your corporate login is through some other thing that we have single sign-on set up for, then you might need to use personal access tokens. But it should work. I used it the other day.
No, like I want to have a seamless connection from data source to publishing on Tableau Online, which should refresh every day. So if I want to put a Python server or TabPy or use any of the calculations.
Oh, you want to use TabPy. TabPy. Okay, so TabPy is different than, yes. TabPy is integration into our calculation pipeline so that you can actually in the process of, as we're generating data through our pipeline, we call out to a Python server we call TabPy. I don't think it works right now in online. No, yeah, we don't work yet, but we're looking at that. There is a team, and they are aware of the fact that this is a gap for us. There are a number of places where we allow third-party code to exist that don't work so well in online. WDCs is another example. We would like, for all the things you can do, we want all of you to run on Tableau Online, and hence all of these beautiful features we talk about had better have a way to work and not expose our infrastructure to weird things that you might do that might then affect other customers.
About the web data connectors, it will be possible to improve the SDK in order to make web data connector with Python instead of
So the question was about, can I write a WDC in Python? There's no plan for that. WDCs are basically web pages for us right now, and we don't So there's no work going on. There's some work going on around resolving WDCs and connector SDK. It's kind of merged together. The other thing that's interesting about WDC is in 2019.4, we finally upgraded the underlying browser engine that they run in on Tableau desktop and in Tableau server when you do refreshes. So now you can actually use modern JavaScript. Before, if you've ever written a WDC, you probably cursed us a little bit because you looked at all the things and how you wanted to write JavaScript, and then you found out that it just didn't work. You're like, why do I still have to write var? I don't want to write var. Can I put an await statement, please? Nope. Now you can. And we've also dropped support for WDC library 1.x. So if you have a WDC, we've put warnings in the product for the past year, and in 2019.4, they will not run anymore, and you will get an error saying you need to upgrade to the newer library because the async model that was needed for the new library, you just couldn't do it with 1.0. There was no way we could make it work. Sorry, say that again.
Actually, I try to create web data creators for my company, but I hit a word about authentication with client ID, client secret, the authentication.
Sure, the auth stuff.
Yeah, I hit a word and
It doesn't do enough for you?
now.
I know that the team that owns all this now is looking at general auth around, like, certainly the connector SDK needs more flexible authentication. We've got a whole bunch of stuff where people, you know, the backend data sources are using OAuth or whatever. So it is an area of improvement that we are looking at, but I don't know if we will solve your specific issue.
Can one of these technologies used for data-driven alerts? So the business specifically wants to know, for instance, if they put a dashboard into production and it catches like wildfire, or let's say there's some mission critical dashboard and it loses 50% of its viewership over X period of time because maybe someone put a competing dashboard out and now someone doesn't know which one is the source of truth. So is there any one of these technologies that could be leveraged for that type of data-driven alert?
The metadata API might be what you want at that point. The metadata API can give you information about, like, how many workbooks might have been created off a data source, how much it's being utilized. Some of this stuff is also available in the REST API. You can actually ask and say, like, hey, how many viewers are looking at this? Specifically for looking at drop-offs, it's probably some combination of those. That's where I would start. Yeah. So you could also create a custom admin view for that. We're looking at some new custom admin views with utilizing extensions. So in the admin view, you can actually, like, gain some insight and then do something from it. I'm super excited about the potential to, like, actually start shipping extensions in our product.
But the idea is the business wants to be alerted. They don't want to have to be manually looking
Yeah.
at like the admin insights or something. They want to get notified so that they can proactively act on that.
So there was a hack the other day at the hackathon that actually connected to the metadata API, at which point you could create a viz of this interaction. I mean, the viz would only really work on server. And then you could create an alert off of your viz that you just created. So that might be a way to look. I don't know if we posted all the hackathon information, but there was a team that created the WDC metadata API.
I need to list of all these projects or, like, contact names of the hackathon people that I have some questions.
Oh, we should write that down, that people want to actually talk to some of them. Yeah, a number of the, like, more successful hackathons were actually written by consulting companies that, like, this is their job. They, like, go help people do interesting things with Tableau. Oh, all right, so I'm here for 2 more questions, and then you've got Ankit, because anxious.
So I just had a question on, you talked briefly about this concept of templates, and I would love to be able to do more with document and like setting common formats or fonts or things like that to help me when I'm creating branded experience that can feel similar.
So I would love to have, we have starters right now.
It is open source, and certainly we can,
Yeah.
I can go through stuff.
You can figure it out. But it is definitely something we want. There are a couple things that I personally have, I have no idea when we'll do them. One is templates. The other is the ability to allow corporate environments to change our defaults. So you could actually push out your own default files along in desktop installations. So you actually, like, by default, we've got a great research team. They do a lot of investigation on what are the best color choices, what are the best font choices, all this. But in the end, you sometimes have your own, like, these are our corporate colors. These, and show me, like when you drag this out, instead of by default choosing this type of chart, we like this type of chart. And I don't want to have to tell everybody to constantly update their things. Like, there are a couple of things that we pick based on our research that it would be great if you could just define your own file and distribute it with all your installation, or even just put it in a shared location, maybe even Tableau server. One of the things we are looking at is connected desktop scenarios where you can manage more things in Tableau server, and then all of your desktops will connect to your Tableau server and inherit some of these like security permissions and so forth. So yes, I hear you. I have no idea when we're going to get to some of that stuff, but I love it. Last question for me right here, and then you do have Ankit, and despite the fact that he's not talking, he is very knowledgeable.
So my question is specifically about the WDC. When using the WDC, after the first page, when you enter the URL, it gets the columns, and again you have to click the update now or get the data now button. So instead of that, I want something from Tableau which can automatically get the data. Just paste the URL, and then you should automatically get the data. I don't want one more click to get the data. That's my request.
Okay. I know that we have different stages in Tableau, so the actual connect stage and verifying, that is done sort of in a visual, like, okay, you can do this. When we actually get the data, we go off into a background process where we don't have the ability to throw a UI at you. So I don't remember if that's why we have an extra button, but okay. Like I said, we're looking into WDC improvements. Most of our improvements are looking at the fact that we now have this connector SDK, and we want to make it really clear to people, and how do we invest in both? Like, what's the best path forward? All right. I really appreciate all of your time. I'm leaving you in the extremely competent before I turn that off, of Ankit, and I hope you had a great conference.
Thanks, Lee. Question. Sure, what's up? I don't think we do. We don't allow export of previous through APIs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The document API,
Yeah.
Don't use the document API.
Yeah, that's something we can add to REST APIs.
as long
Yeah, I can put that down. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. You mean the server admin APIs, the TSM APIs?
No, no. So we
Uh-huh.
but there is no API to extract the information of the groups. Kind of.
Oh, we do have REST APIs for groups and
So
users.
there are other APIs which can be there,
Yes. Yes.
which you, yeah. So basically, what are the plans to expand the list of REST API for Tableau Online specifically? Because in Tableau Online you have admin views where you have all the data, but it's not there.
Yeah. We do have gaps in REST APIs, as Lee suggested. We are working on filling up those gaps, and we're also working on this new platform internally, which is to make building APIs as easy as possible for our developers, the feature team developers. It's as easy as not even have to make a REST API. It's just there. They build any functionalities and everything is powered by REST APIs. And then the mission is that our own products like desktop, client, mobile, TSC, or browser, everything is powered by the same set of APIs. So we are getting there because we realize that we build some features and then we have to go build REST APIs 6 months later. There's always gaps, and there's still going to be gaps because features are built by so many engineers at Tableau, and they don't necessarily go and build REST APIs for it. So that's why we're working on building a new platform, which is just going to make everything is exposed as APIs right away. Yeah.
Thank you.
You had a question? I guess we don't have any more questions. No. Postman Collections?
For REST API, or like Open API?
Yeah, so Open API spec is just another way of describing APIs. It's an official open standard. And then when you can just import that file into Postman. Not right now. We're working on that, yes. And the Open API spec is going to be available right out of your Tableau server on a URL. So you don't even have to go looking for on GitHub or anything. You don't have to go find what version of server you are running. You just go to your Tableau server. There will be a URL. You go there, and it serves you the whole spec. You download it. You put it in Postman, and you can put it in. If you have ever heard of Swagger. It's a CodeGen tool. You put it in there, and it can generate CodeGen in any language you want. Yeah.
Can I get the contact, or if you can share the hackathon event?
Yes, I have it here. Yeah.
Ameliorate the introduction of GDBC driver.
GDBC driver? Yeah.
Yeah, because I give you one example. At Indeed, we have a Presto. And unfortunately, we applied Kerberos. And you don't support Kerberos MIT yet. But with a GDBC driver, I am able to connect to Kerberos and to link with my key tab. And I have no problem to connect. But with Tableau, I can see the tables. But when I drag and drop and want to make custom SQL, it doesn't work because I guess one functionality you don't include.
Yes, and that's why the connector SDK's functionality is the one we are building. Because the vanilla JDBC is not catered to serve every single database.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this SDK is not for us, it's for the...
You can go ahead and start using it and make one yourself. For camera, it's a pretty simple API. You can go ahead and build a connector SDK yourself, or the database that you're talking about, if they can make one for you if they have a big use case of Tableau users. But if they don't, then you can go ahead and make one yours. But I believe Tableau and the community and the support will be making a bunch of these over time and just releasing it on blog posts and GitHub.
Yes.
Because it's a brand new feature, so give it some time and then you will see connectors for every single database.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions?
Not a question, but I need help. If anybody has worked on any WDC stuff.
They might not be able to.
So I'm just making this request for help. So I'm working on some WDC connector, but it's not working as intended. So if anybody has worked on WDC, if you can please share your contact details, I would like to get some sample code from you guys. Any help is appreciated. Thank you.
If you want, go stop by at the showcase booth for the same thing, developer platform. You can ask there. Or the other resources, you can stop by the Tableau Doctor and also ask there. Yeah. That I'm not sure. Yeah.
We still have about 5 minutes left. If anybody else has any questions, you're more than welcome. He'll stay in the room as well. If you need to talk to him, you're more than welcome as well.
I guess.
Well, thank you guys for coming. It was a great show. We appreciate all you guys turning out. And thank you to our presenter. Have a great day.